Throughout the time of this ministry, I have made many videos trying to explain truths that the world system likes to cover up and hide. Many of us have been working diligently to remove the falsehoods spewed from this false world system out of our understanding. Over the past few months, as I've been going over the end times and trying to explain the new covenant, there is always a backdrop of confusion from which people are not truly able to comprehend what it is that I'm actually saying. For instance, in the video about replacement theology last week, many people still did not really understand because they are confused. The problem comes in when I discuss Israel. There are many that believe that when I speak about Israel, I'm talking about modern day Israel. And because of this, there is strong confusion. I truly believe that things are soon to change in this world, and our Father is leading me in a way to speak to the dry bones directly. But before I get there, I need to readdress a subject I went over a few years back so that a major part of the confusion is handled. I do know that there will be many different rebuttals to my message to the dry bones, and if I at least cover this one area, it should help provide enough understanding for those that truly desire to understand and not just ones that seek to disagree at all costs. You see, as I discuss who the Hebrews are, there is always much confusion because of the huge elephant in the room. Basically, what it comes down to is that if this information is true, then who are those people that are in the land of Israel right now? If the information I'm presenting is true, who are the people that the world says are Jews? This topic is not something that I take lightly because this world does not like the subject being spoken of. Though the history is well documented and plain to see, you won't see any History Channel documentaries explaining what I'm about to say. This topic is a part of the Hijacker series, but I took this video down off of YouTube and put it on my website in a chess move. But as the clock winds down, it's important that these things are brought back out again so that as this world moves in with their agenda, those seeking clarity can have some answers. The first part of the Hijacker series, we dealt with the Roman Catholic Church. And I had to deal with that topic first because when speaking of hijackers, you cannot ever skip over the Roman Catholic Church, which is the beginning point of the planting of the tares and a major point of confusion for this world. And then from part 3, moving on, we dealt with the Protestant Church, which is just a different branch from the seeds that Satan planted when planting his tares. But this current topic that we're on right now, which is part 2, is extremely important to comprehend for many reasons. You know, it's clear that we are in the last days. And regardless of your end time doctrine, the overall understanding of what is to come is the man of sin, the lawless one, the beast of Revelation, whom the world knows as the Antichrist. We know of this figure, but we, for the most part, gloss over what he is coming to do. And especially if you have been influenced by the Christian end times doctrine from people like Tim LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins, creators of the Left Behind series, they have told an entertaining story that this Antichrist just comes up out of nowhere in a world that wasn't really living in deception, besides that the majority rejected Jesus. All those who accepted Jesus before were raptured, and the end times is all about making new Christians. That's what the storyline says. That's what end times mainstream Christian doctrine really shows. A part of that story is what the Antichrist does with the Jews. But I'm sorry to tell you, if you didn't already know, that work is a story of fiction, and the truth is quite different than what they have presented. You know, it's clear that everyone expects an Antichrist, an anti-Messiah. If you understood the world that we live in, you would understand that Satan, the god of this world, has been puppet mastering this world for millennia, thousands of years, and has been pushing forth his satanic agenda for his satanic kingdom. When the time comes, the Antichrist will rise. His rise and short reign is a long-held goal by Luciferians and those who pledge to spread his light. And so what all of them are doing right now is preparing the world for his acceptance by spreading the light of Lucifer. The Antichrist is just a part of this, but he will not come until they feel the world is ready, and most importantly, when Yah allows it. And right now, it clearly seems like the world is ready. Though, like I said, I believe we are waiting on Yah to open up the seals. Anyways, we expect an Antichrist, but we don't realize that the only reason he will rise and be claimed king of the Jews and the rest of the world is because he is being raised up in an anti-Yasharel. For some reason, people expect the Antichrist to be accepted by true Israel, when that's not the case. Everything about this group of people that are inhabitants of this land right now is all about bringing about the conditions for this coming satanic kingdom. This has been a goal for at least a millennia and was only able to come about after the first hijacker that we spoke about in this hijacker series, the Roman Catholic Church, after they dealt harshly with the true Hebrews so that they could properly stamp out knowledge of their existence while bringing the world into acceptance of the hijackers. Now, right now, you might think all of this sounds crazy or a reach, but I don't think you can hold this view as we go through this history. So we're going to discuss the history of the people who the world feels are the actual chosen people. Let's begin. Okay, so before we begin, let me say this. I love the Semitic people. I do not hate anyone. I simply have a view of history that may differ from what the mainstream teaches you. But this is not about hate, but about facts and understanding. I'm speaking from a standpoint of history, and as I have done with my other series like the Understanding Israel series and the Hijacker series, or the History That You Should Not Ignore series, I will cite my sources from which I am bringing this history out. And let me be clear that once this information is presented, a quick Google search can confirm all of this because the information is not even hidden. It's just not mainstream. So for this video, I will be using Arthur Koestler's book, The 13th Tribe, and Kevin Allen Brooks' book, The Jews of Khazaria. I will try to place these books on my website. Let me again be clear. There have been many different books on this subject. Dr. Godby, in his book, The Lost Tribes, A Myth, he speaks on this topic as well. But these books were specifically made for this topic, and therefore they discuss this topic the most in depth. So let's get into it. Fortunately, the answer to the question of who are the people in this land is the beginning answer to where we must start this whole understanding. So let's speak on it. These people are Khazars, or Khazars. I'm not sure how they pronounced it, but that's the word if you ever want to research it on your own. So in order to understand this subject, we need to discuss the Khazars. Kevin Brooks explains that the Khazars emerged on the world scene as Turkic horsemen who believed in shamanism and lived a nomadic lifestyle. They are predominantly Turkic and probably originated in the steppes of Central Asia or perhaps in the Ural or Caucasus Mountains. So basically, the details of their origins are said to be somewhat obscure. Now, I do have a reason for this, and Edom is a part of this, but I'm not ready to discuss that. Y'all willing, I can get to that at another point. But let's just deal with the facts right now that I can show you. Koestler writes that the origin of the name Khazar has been the subject of much speculation. Most likely the word is derived from the Turkish root gaz, to wander, and simply means nomad. And they speculate this because this is what Khazars were. Brooks says the Khazars were racially and ethnically mixed. Among them were black-haired peoples with dark brown eyes, red-haired peoples with green or hazel eyes, and fair-haired people with blue eyes. Many resembled Europeans or Eastern Europeans. One of the earliest factual references to the Khazars dates from the year 555 AD, when an anonymous author wrote a supplement attached to the Syriac translation of Greek church history of Zacharias Rater. In this supplement, Brooks says the Khazars were listed among the nomadic tribes living in tents north of the Caucasus Mountains. And so if you just want to start there and go in the Britannica, you can see that this information is used. But as we get to where I'm going in this video, their information gets cloudy. I just want to make sure you can follow this yourself in your own studies. Start at Khazars. So let's talk about their history. For over 60 years, the Western Turks ruled the Khazars. In the year 567 AD, hordes of Western Turks arrived in the Volga River region. They assumed control over the Sibirs, Onagers, and Alans of the North Caucasus. By circa 570, the Khazars were under the jurisdiction of the Western Turkish Empire. The Western Turkish Empire broke apart during the 630s. The tribes of the North Caucasus found themselves in the midst of a major transition. After the disintegration of the Western Turkish Empire, the Khazars were able to reassert their independence in their land. So basically, After the fall of the Western Turks, they began to govern themselves. That's all I'm saying. This is not mainstream history, which is why you might not have heard of them. It's important to also clarify this is not to be confused with the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire did not come on the scene as of yet, so don't be confused. We are in the 7th century right now. The independent state of Khazaria was established in the 630s and 640s. The whole region between the Volga and the fortress city of Derbent came into the possession of the Khazars. This whole area right here. The Khazars soon became the dominant power in southern Russia. The expansion of Khazaria into new territories displaced other ethnic groups. Khazaria was one of the most diverse nations of medieval Europe. It was a multi-ethnic society with a population of Slavic, Turkic, Iranian, Arabic, and Caucasian peoples who professed other faiths, including Islam and Christianity. What I'm trying to explain here is that this group of people were not Hebrews. They did not descend from Hebrews by blood. They were a mixture of different groups, different tribes, but they were not mixed with, nor were they descendants from Judah or Yasharel. In Kevin Brooks' book, this is a map of Khazaria and neighboring empires in the 9th and 10th century. This area is what we know as Ukraine today. And understand, that's not a coincidence. But let's keep going. Khazaria was a major center for trade, especially in the 8th and 9th centuries. The Khazars controlled several trade routes that connected Asia and Europe. One of the most important of these was along the Volga. This was a well-known people. Unlike the history I had to go through about the Zhou dynasty and understanding Israel Part 8, the Khazars in their history is well known and it's not even hidden. That's why when anyone challenges me about who these people in the land are, I can tell they haven't tried to research them at all because they're not hiding this information. It's very plain to see. So these are the people, the Khazars. The next question must be, where am I going with all this? How did they become Jewish, right? Well, it's very simple. They converted. Arthur Koestler explains, at the beginning of the 8th century, the world was polarized between the two superpowers representing Christianity and Islam. Their ideological doctrines were welded to power politics pursued by the classical methods of propaganda, subversion, and military conquest. Basically saying that during the times of the 8th century, the world was ruled by either Christianity or Islam. That's all it's saying. So the Khazar Empire represented a third force, which had proved equal to either of them, both as an adversary and an ally. But it could only maintain its independence by accepting neither Christianity nor Islam, for either choice would have automatically subordinated it to the authority of the Roman Emperor or the Caliph of Baghdad. There had been no lack of efforts by either court to convert the Khazars to Christianity or Islam though, but all they resulted in was the exchange of diplomatic courtesies, dynastic intermarriages, and shifting military alliances based on mutual self-interest. Relying on its military strength, the Khazar kingdom was determined to preserve its position as the third force, summing that all up basically saying that in order to keep their independence, they weren't going to accept Christianity or Islam. Koestler quotes J.B. Berry from his book, A History of the Eastern Roman Empire. It says, "There can be no question that the ruler was actuated by political motives in adopting Judaism. To embrace Mohammedanism would have made him the spiritual dependent of the caliphs, who attempted to press their faith on the Khazars. And in Christianity lay the danger of his becoming an ecclesiastical vassal of the Roman Empire. Judaism was a reputable religion with sacred books which both Christian and Mohammedan respected. It elevated him above the heathen barbarians and secured him against the interference of caliph or emperor. But he did not adopt, along with the circumcision, the intolerance of the Jewish cult. He allowed the mass of his people to abide in their heathendom and worship their idols. You see, they were adopting the faith. They weren't actually taking it in sincerity. It was a political move. This is very similar to what the Roman Catholic Church did when they made Christianity their main religion. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I hope you're following. I know I'm giving a lot of history, but it's all important. Now real quick, before I go any further about this conversion, I want to make something clear. This conversion is not based on someone's opinion. This is not speculation. It is, in fact, well documented. There are primary sources that anyone can seek out for themselves in order to understand this clearly. There are Khazar documents such as the reply of King Joseph, called the Schechter letter, also called the Cambridge document, and the Kievan letter. There are reports from Arab and Persian historians, travelers, and commentators, like the writings from Ahmad Fadlan, Abu Ishaq Ibrahim, or Muhammad al-Farisi al-Ishqari, and Al-Jabbar Muhammad al-Hamadani. I know I might be butchering these names. There is the Persian treatise known as Denkart, and many other sources. Just look these sources up yourself. It speaks about the conversion of the Khazars. So this is not some opinion. All you need to do is actually do the research. But just note that even without these sources, you have a group of people named Khazars who are actually nomadic Turks, not Hebrews, who reside in this area of Eastern Europe, the exact place where most of the Jews in Israel today come from. This is no coincidence, but we will keep going. Coastal writes, Khazaria was a relatively civilized country among the barbarians of the north, yet not committed to either of the militant creeds, and so it became a natural haven for the periodic exodus of Jews under Byzantine rule, threatened by forced conversion and other pressures. Persecution in varied forms had started with Justinian I, 527 to 65, and assumed particularly vicious forms under Heraclius in the 7th century, Leo III in the 8th, Basil and Leo IV in the 9th, Romanus in the 10th. You see, the true Yahudim were being persecuted in that area as well. You see, this is their history. As they were continuously being persecuted, they were continuously scattering. This is a part of the prophecy of the scattering. Yah was going to move the true Yahudim and scatter them all around the world. This is all a part of that prophecy. You see, they would find no rest, so they kept searching and seeking for some kind of place of refuge. Particularly in the Understanding Israel series, I went over this history very often. The true Yahudim never really caught a break, and they were continuously pressured to convert to Christianity, or they were persecuted. This third force of Khazaria became a place of refuge for them. Leo III, who ruled the Byzantine Empire during the 2 decades immediately before the Khazars converted to Judaism, he attempted to end the tolerated status of Jews by ordering all his Jewish subjects to be baptized. Now, history notes that the implementation of the order seemed to have been rather ineffective, but it led to the flight of a considerable number of Yahudim from Byzantium. The only mercy shown by history to the Yahudim who took flight or were driven to it was the existence of Khazaria, both before and after the conversion. So let's discuss the conversion. The conversion to Judaism. In al-Bakri's Book of Kingdoms and Roads, 11th century, I referenced him in part 8 of the Understanding Israel series. In his book, he writes, the reason for the conversion to Judaism of the king of the Khazars, who had previously been a pagan, is as follows. He had adopted Christianity. Then he recognized its falsehood and discussed this matter, which greatly worried him, with one of his high officials. The latter said to him, O king, those in possession of sacred scriptures fall into 3 groups. Summon them and ask them to state their case. Then follow the one who is in possession of the truth. So he sent to the Christians for a bishop. Now there was with the king a Jew, skilled in argument, who engaged him in disputation. He asked the bishop, what do you say of Moses, the son of Amram, and the Torah which was revealed to him? The bishop replied, Moses is a prophet, and the Torah speaks the truth. Then the Jew said to the king, he has already admitted the truth of my creed. Ask him now what he believes in. So the king asked him, and he replied, I say that Jesus, the Messiah, is the son of Mary. He is the Word, and he has revealed the mysteries in the name of God. Then said the Jew to the king of the Khazars, he preaches a doctrine which I know not, while he accepts my propositions. But the bishop was not strong in producing evidence. Then the king asked for a Muslim, and they sent him a scholarly, clever man who was good at arguments. But the Jew hired someone who poisoned him on the journey, and he died. and the Jews succeeded in winning the king for the faith, so that he embraced Judaism. And that's from al-Bakri. That account seems biased, but okay, that's his account. The next account we can look to comes from the Khazar correspondence, which is an exchange of letters in Hebrew between Hasdai Shaprut, the Jewish chief minister of the Caliph of Cordoba, and Joseph, king of the Khazars, or rather, between their respective scribes. According to his own account, Hasdai first heard of the existence of an independent Jewish kingdom from some merchant traders from Khorasan in Persia, but he doubted the truth of this story. Later, he questioned the members of a Byzantine diplomatic mission to Cordoba, and they confirmed the merchant's account, contributing a considerable amount of factual detail about the Khazar kingdom, including the name, Joseph, of its present king. Thereupon, Hasdai decided to send couriers with a letter to King Joseph. The letter contains a list of questions about the Khazar state, its people, method of government, armed forces, and so on, including an inquiry to which of the 12 tribes Joseph belonged. This seems to indicate that Hasdai thought the Jewish Khazars to hail actually from Israel, as the Spanish Yahudim did, and perhaps to even represent one of the scattered tribes. Joseph, not being of Jewish descent, belonged, of course, to none of the tribes. In his reply to Hasdai, he provides, as we shall see, a genealogy of a different kind, but his main concern is to give Hasdai a detailed, if legendary, account of the conversion, which took place 2 centuries earlier, and the circumstances that led to it. Joseph's narrative starts with a eulogy of his ancestor, King Bulan, a great conqueror and a wise man who drove out the sorcerers and idolaters from his land. Here's a name that you want to research: King Bulan of Khazaria. That's a great start. You don't have to deny anything I'm saying, just look this character up. Anyways, at some point an angel appeared to King Bulan in his dreams, exhorting him to worship the only true God and promising that in exchange he will bless and multiply Bulan's offsprings and deliver his enemies into his hands and make his kingdom last to the ends of the world. And of course, this is inspired by the story of the covenant in Genesis, and it implies that the Khazars too claim the status of a chosen race, who made their own covenant with Yahweh, even though they were not descended from Abraham's seed. Bulan's renunciation of idolatry in favor of the only true God was only the first step, which still left the choice open between the 3 monotheistic creeds. At least, this is what the continuation of Joseph's letter seemed to imply. In the letter, he goes on to say, after their invasion of Armenia, King Bulan's fame spread to all countries. The king of Edom, Byzantium, and the king of Ishmaelim, the Muslims, heard the news and sent to him envoys with precious gifts and money, and learned men to convert him to their beliefs. But the king was wise and sent for a Jew with much knowledge and acumen and put all 3 together to discuss their doctrines. So, real quick, I know I just gave a lot of history. I don't want to lose you. What's being said is that King Bulan met with an angel that told him to worship the only true God, and this one true God made a covenant with them as a chosen people. And this is very much like the story of Islam, it's just in a different flavor. But King Bulan of Khazaria was trying to figure out which religion actually was a representation of the one true God. This is what all that history I just gave was saying. I'm just being thorough. So from this, we have another brain trust or roundtable conference, just like al-Bakri spoke of, except the difference that the Muslim had not been poisoned beforehand. But the pattern of the argument is much the same. After long and futile discussions, the king adjourns the meeting for 3 days, during which the discussants are left to cool their heels in their respective tents. Then he reverts to a strategy. He convokes the discussants separately. He asks the Christian which of the 2 religions is nearer the truth, and the Christian answers, the Jews. He confronts the Muslim with the same question and gets the same reply. And from this, he chose Judaism. That's the story. Both books, The 13th Tribe and Jews of Khazaria, go more in depth of this conversion, and they explain through the primary sources I referenced. I'm not trying to give an in-depth study on this conversion because it does not matter to me. The Khazars converted to Judaism to keep power over their kingdom and to not bow to the Roman Catholic Church or the Islamic Caliphate. This is an undisputed fact. Under the reign of King Balan, evidently during the first half of the 9th century, the Khazars officially converted to Judaism. King Bulan became the first Jewish ruler of the Khazars, following almost 2 centuries of shamanist and Muslim rulers. So let's be clear here. When speaking of this people, we are not speaking about people that were prophesied of, but people that hijacked a covenant in the 9th century. And the information is out there, easy to find for anyone who desires to know the history for themselves. Again, just do a quick Google search of King Bulan of Khazaria and then ask yourself, why have you never heard of him? This seems like a pretty big event, a very big thing that we should at least know about. Anyway, let's keep reading. Brooks writes, the religion of the Jews was voluntarily accepted by the Khazars in the middle of the 9th century. Available evidence indicates that the Khazars practiced standard rabbinical Judaism consisting in part of the following elements. 1. Circumcision. 2. Observance of Hanukkah. 3. Observance of Passover. 4. Observance of the Sabbath. 5. Study of the Torah, Talmud, and Mishnah. 6. Prayer according to the proper order established by the Khazans. 7. Observance of the laws of kosher by refraining from food banned by the Torah. 8. Washing rituals and ritual ablutions. 9. Simple burials. 10. Refraining from idol worship. 11. Adherence to all the other guidelines of Jewish law. 12. Giving newborn children Hebrew names. 13. Constructing synagogues. 14. Using Hebrew character set for writing. 15. Using the Hebrew language. And 16. Building a tabernacle in the shape of that built by Moses. And it was from this point in history right here, there was a group in the world that were Jews that were not Jews by blood or by covenant, but by conversion. And this is very different biblically compared to what Bible prophecy actually deals with. You cannot just convert a group of people into Yah's promise and just take their covenant. It does not work this way. And listen, everyone just needs to deal with that. It's why we have a difference in Hebrew right now. Why there's modern Hebrew and Paleo Hebrew. They changed the language. Anyways, there was a history of the Khazars after their conversion. And for time's sake, I will not go over that history because it does not serve a purpose. Let's just be clear that while the rest of the scattered Yahudim around the world were suffering from persecutions and from forced baptisms and conversions, the Khazarian Jews did not meet with that same struggle. They were the third force in the world. That's not to say that they did not have contenders that are against them, because that's not true. It's just that they were not under the curses, which is why we continuously say, if you want to understand who Yasharel is today, you have to go to the curses. You have to look at it biblically and not just based on what the mainstream world is telling us to believe. You have to go back to the Bible. But keeping on with the history, their Khazarian Empire eventually fell to Russia in the 10th century, but from this point in history, when they are spoken about, they are no longer mentioned by Khazars any longer, more than they are referenced to as Jews, and they assume the identity of the chosen ones of the Most High. In modern history, they hijack the identity of the true Yahudim. For instance, in the accounts of when Russia turned to Christianity, in the Russia Primary Chronicle, also called Chronicle of Nestor or Kiev Chronicle, it gives a detailed account of the early history of the Eastern Slavs to the 2nd decade of the 12th century. It speaks on Prince Vladimir's conversion to Orthodox Christianity. It tells us, before his conversion series of diplomatic maneuverings and theological discussions with representatives of the 4 major religions, this is very much like a kind of mirror image to the debates before the Khazar conversion to Judaism. There were now 4 major religions because of the break between the Roman Catholic Church, which was the Latin Church, and the Greek, which was the Orthodox Church. The Russian Chronicle's account of Vladimir's conversion first mentions a victory he achieved against the Volga Bulgars, followed by a treaty of friendship. The Bulgars declared, "May peace prevail between us till stone floats and straw sinks." Vladimir returned to Kiev, and the Bulgars sent a Muslim religious mission to convert him. They described to him the joys of paradise, where each man will be given 70 fair women. Vladimir listened to them with approval, but when it came to abstinence from pork and wine, he drew the line. "Drinking," said he, is the joy of the Russes. We cannot exist without that pleasure. Next came a German delegation of Roman Catholics, adherents of the Latin Rite. They fared no better when they brought up, as one of the main requirements of their faith, fasting according to one's strength. Then Vladimir answered, "Depart hence. Our fathers accepted no such principle." The third mission consisted of Khazar Jews. They came off worse, and I want you to really listen to this and note this. Vladimir asked them why they no longer ruled Jerusalem. They made answer, "God was angry at our forefathers and scattered us among the Gentiles on account of our sins." These were Khazars that were saying this. The prince then demanded, "How can you hope to teach others while you yourselves are cast out and scattered abroad by the hand of God? Do you expect us to accept that fate also?" Do you understand? This is how they answered him. Because they converted to Judaism, they took on the full identity of the Yahudim and were even representatives of this to the rest of the world. And guess what? The rest of the world didn't care. People were converting to either Christianity or Islam. These converts were allowed to be Jews, and therefore they were, while the true Yahudim were not allowed to be Jews, and they were forced into conversion. And this is clear that the identity of the true Yahudim was then hijacked. Now listen, before I get to modern history, let's get a few other things clarified. Throughout history, the Khazars did not just stay in that land. They spread out and dispersed. If you're ever traveling around Europe and going and visiting the Jewish quarters, and you want to understand if it was the true Yahudim or if it was the converted ones, you'll know by a couple of things, mainly by the Hebrew language that they were using. If it was the true Yahudim, they used the Paleo, and the converted ones, they used modern Hebrew. But more importantly, in the Jewish quarters, they held up that satanic star, the star that's on the flag of Israel right now. So if you ever see that, and they say that this is where the Jews were, you know that this is the converted one, because the true Yahudim never used that symbol. Kevin Brooks' book goes into great detail of this, though, about the scattering, if you want to read on it further. There is detailed record of how they spread into Hungary, how they spread into Transylvania, which is Romania, Moldova. They went into Lithuania and Belarus, into Poland, Russia, Spain, Ukraine, and of course, Germany. We get the term Ashkenazi because they were in Europe. This should not be news to you if you understand modern history. That's why I try not to argue with people anymore that want to tell me that I'm focused on race or whatever. After all the history that I have shown, and then I tell people who these people actually are, if they want to disagree, it's because they rather believe the lie, and that's on them. These Khazars spread all around Eastern and Western Europe and North Africa. This was their scattering. And while the true Yahudim were being persecuted, they were not a part of it. That's why they were able to keep their faith. This was a hijacking of an identity, and later on, as the hijacking grew in strength and many other agendas came along, like the transatlantic slave trade or the conversion of the many true Yahudim in Europe, over time losing their identity, in our modern times, they hid the history and they put it behind race and skin color, which is the subject that most of you deniers, you guys can't get past it. All you want to see is skin color. That's why you call us black people. I keep telling everyone in these videos that when you look at skin color, you are moving through your flesh, because this was a taught mindset. It was taught to you. The overall history of this world was not this way. It was about tribes of people. So if you're not looking at the tribes of people, you're not really understanding the world that you live in. You want to know why some are called Ashkenazi? According to an article from Harvard Medical School on November 30th of 2022, titled "Ancient DNA Provides New Insights into Ashkenazi Jewish History," the largest study to date of ancient DNA from Jewish individuals reveals unexpected genetic subgroups in medieval German Ashkenazi Jews and sheds light on the founder event, which a small population gave rise to most present-day Ashkenazi Jews. The findings, spearheaded by geneticists from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and Harvard Medical School, were published November 30th in Cell. About half of Jewish people around the world today identify as Ashkenazi, meaning that they descend from Jews who lived in Central or Eastern Europe. The term was initially used to define a distinct cultural group of Jews who settled in the 10th century in the Rhineland and Western Germany. Yeah, read the rest of the article on your own if you like. I just want to point out that this is the exact history I have just given you. And here's the thing, these people, they're not even hiding it, because they use the name Ashkenaz, which is a son of Japheth, showing that they are Europeans that do not descend from Shem. But because people are so moved by skin color and race, they want to gloss over all this because that truth is easier for them to accept. It's easier for them to look at skin color and not about the tribes that these people actually come from. Now, there is more to this history because as time progressed, there were those who came out of that history and were used by the enemy and given massive wealth and control. And they used this control to exert power over the whole world. They were sold out to Lucifer. They even made it that it's anti-you-know-what to speak of their wealth and control behind the scenes of all the industries of this world. These people are Khazars. If you even just go back to the Bible and look at the blessings and the curses, if you believe that these people are actually the people of the book, they should not be blessed. You believe that they crucified the Messiah. Why would they be blessed for that? They are in fact cursed, which is why you see the curses established on one people in this world. Anyways, all that history has brought us to the point that we are right now at in history. So let's go back to the question of who are the people in the land right now. Let's first deal with the land, starting with Palestine. It's called Palestine from the Latin Palestina, which was coined by the ancient Greeks for the area of land occupied by the Philistines. Yes, the original inhabitants of the land were the Philistines. They were in control of the land before the Hebrews conquered the land. After the second revolt of the Yahudim, the Hebrews were crushed by the Romans, and Emperor Hadrian wiped the province of Judea off the Roman map and renamed it Syria Palestina, which was then broken up into about 3-part units: Palestina Prima, Palestina Secunda, second, and Palestina Tertia, the third. This all existed until the Muslims began their conquest of the Middle East region. In the early to mid 7th century, around 634 AD, Arab Muslim forces had appeared in the area and conquered the land in what was called the Levant. It was the Muslim conquest of the Levant. You should know of this area of the Levant, which contains the areas of Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, and Syria, and the modern state of Israel. That's why back in the day, Obama used to call the group ISIL instead of ISIS.
And one of those groups is ISIL.
It was about the Levant. ISIS stands for Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, and ISIL is Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, which is more defined and much more than Iraq and Syria. Anyways, after the Muslim conquest of the Levant, by the year 635, Palestine, Jordan, and southern Syria, with the exception of Jerusalem and Caesarea, were in Muslim control. From this point, there were holy wars with the Crusades and Knights Templar, which was covered in part 1 of the History That Should Not Be Ignored series. But the area of Palestine, which included the land of Israel, before it was given to its current inhabitants, it was occupied territory of Muslims. Now let me also say this. You need to be mindful that the real challenge that we're dealing with maps from our conquerors. We have their history and know these lands based off their maps. I recognize that these territories could just be major lies in itself. But rather than making a difficult subject more difficult, I'm sticking to what I can clearly document and show. The land of Israel, specifically the city of Jerusalem, have been highly contested for millennia, but not for the reasons that we're seeing today. The conflict that we're seeing today is not a long-held conflict. It was created after World War II. Now, it's important to understand that what we're seeing in Israel today, it's a modern conflict made after a redistribution of land. Now, a lot of that land of Palestine that we just went over, though it was occupied predominantly by Muslims, it was at some point owned by the Rothschilds family. The Rothschilds brought much of the land in Palestine, now called Israel, from the Arabs and Turks. The family was and are huge supporters of the Zionist movement.
It's 67 words long, it's 100 years old, and it changed the course of history for the Middle East and the Jewish people. The Balfour Declaration, the expression of the British government's support for a Jewish home in Palestine, was sent by British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to the second Lord Rothschild. I'm here in Buckinghamshire at Waddesdon Manor to speak with the fourth Lord Rothschild, about the Balfour Declaration, what it means for Britain, for the Jewish people, and the Rothschild family.
The Foreign Office, November the 2nd, 1917. Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty's government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet.
Possibly the most famous letter in modern Jewish history, and it begins with 3 words: Dear Lord Rothschild. Why was it that this letter was sent by the Foreign Secretary to your great-uncle Walter?
It's an interesting question because he was really interested in ornithology, although he became interested in Zionism. I think the reason was this, that it was primarily a movement from Eastern Europe, but they didn't clarify who was in charge of that movement. And in addition, it was, after all, in Great Britain. So they felt that the Rothschild family should be the one to whom it was addressed. And Walter was Lord Rothschild, and he was a Zionist. And those really are the background reasons.
So Walter received the Balfour Declaration, and I have a copy here. And I wonder if I could possibly ask you to read it for us.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. I'm going to put on my spectacles to make sure I read it accurately. His Majesty's government view with favour the establishment of Palestine as a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I should be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. Yours, Arthur Balfour.
You see, that's the real world that we live in. If you're not adding all that into your understanding, then you're just living in deception. Again, for your own research, these are terms you should research on your own. Zionism, Khazars, Ashkenazi. This is who Yahusha is speaking about in Revelation 2:9 and 3:9. So when talking about all this, people love always asking, what about this event with Hitler? I won't even say the name of it. You should know. You have to understand the people with control of this world. You have to understand their method of order out of chaos, and understand what they were able to do after this event. And then why this happened will make much more sense. I am not a denier of this event at all. I just know it happened for specific reasons that we're beginning to see the conclusion of soon when they rebuild the temple and the Antichrist is claimed king. Anyways, after Hitler, it was decided that the Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews that were persecuted in Eastern Europe needed their own homeland. Please note that the slaves that were sent to a foreign land to do forced labor for 400 years, that were still being oppressed at that same time, never received any consideration like this at all. I just want you to note that. Like, think about it. An event that was over a couple of decades brought more support by the world for these people, more than 400 years of slavery and oppression that Negroes were still fighting for, not just in America, but in South America and South Africa, just to name a couple others. And today, people even get bothered when we even bring up slavery. They're like, it's just time to get over it. But they don't hold these people to that same standard. After this event that happened, the world justified a massive change, and the worst part, the absolute worst part of this all really is that people actually believe that Yahuwah did this, and this is a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. They believe that this is about the restoration of Israel. I'm making this video to clearly show you that it was not. But again, using this strategy of order out of chaos, there was not many that could deny those who were now believed to be true Jews. They could not deny them their right to the homeland. Through the Balfour Declaration, the Rothschild family donated the land they owned of what was known as Palestine at the time to the United Nations. The United Nations then gave this land to these converted Khazarian Jews so that they would have a homeland and never would have to face the kind of oppression and slaughter they were submitted to during that event, even though that land was never their homeland. And thus, the state of Israel, the modern state of Israel, was created. And though the prophecy is for all 12 tribes of Israel to come back to the land, they clearly show that only one tribe came back, and they just changed the name to Israel, and this is how everybody looks at Bible prophecy being fulfilled. There is no biblical standard, just that this is what the world wants to believe, and this is what everyone decides to believe. When they took over that land, they had wars against the inhabitants, and it was extremely violent, which is why there's still conflict in that land to this day, because these people came in and took land that they don't have a claim to. This is why we see Gamal Abdel Nasser. He was the second president in Egypt. In 1956, Nasser went on television and radio in the 50s and stated to the Ashkenazi, "You have left black and returned white. You are impostors and shall never see peace." This right here is the true history of the world. And what the world wants us to believe is that everything that has happened right now with all of this is a fulfillment of Bible prophecy in regards to the restoration of Israel, which is how they have tied the Christian church into supporting it.
Or watching across America and around the world, today the Jewish people are at war for their very survival. So let's bow our heads today and pray.
You see, the thing is that because people have not read these prophecies for themselves and they just listen to others who tell them what they must believe, they believe that the restoration of Israel has happened, but it's just happening in stages or something, which is why, though they feel our Father restored Israel, this is why they do not have peace. And this is why the world is ready to pick a side with this coming conflict between Israel and Iran. And it's why the Christian church, even though they see Israel provoking the conflict, they support them anyway, because they feel it's all about Bible prophecy. And let's be clear, it is, but they don't recognize the side that they're rooting for. What you have been given is the history of the second major hijacker in this Christian religion, and it goes deeper than just Christianity. But today they use the Christians to support this agenda because the majority of Christians are just followers without discernment, and they feel that they are obligated to follow this agenda because they want to support Israel. But the true wickedness of their hearts are shown because while they support all this, they persecute and hate the true Yahudim, and they don't even want to understand their plight, which is more biblically tied to the God that they feel that they are serving. It's hypocrisy at its finest, and people will be judged for it. It's part of the strong delusion. People are loving and believing the lie. And this truth is being given to you, not for you to hate, or for anything other than for you to come into knowledge of the truth, and then you turn to the truth and then live through it. It's because the truth sets us free. I have presented this information again because we are truly at a crossroad and the next turning of this agenda. And depending on what you follow will determine your future and your relationship with Yah. I wish it wasn't so black and white, but it really is. One path is the truth, and Yah will cover you. The other is a lie, and it will lead you into the arms of Satan if it hasn't already done this already. I have made a video that speaks about the plot twist that most people are not ready for in the end times. This lie is a big part of it. The whole agenda has been used in order for Satan to replace Yah's chosen people with his own, for him to rebuild the temple, but Satan wants it dedicated to himself, which is why he will use all three religions that are tied to him. All the rulers of these three world religions are followers of the enemy of Yah, this created being in rebellion. He wants to use this people and bloodline to put his son as king, who will be the lawless one. And the thing is that everyone sees this, and they know this. They know that the Jews are trying to rebuild the temple. They know they're trying to sacrifice red heifers on the Temple Mount. They know that they're waiting for the Messiah to come, and they're trying to usher him in. They know all of this.
Wow, these look like the finest red heifers from around the world.
But what if I tell you that the Jewish dream to rebuild the temple is not over? There are things that are happening currently in Israel and around the world that clear out the way for the new Jewish temple. If you would ask the Jewish people if they would like the temple to be rebuilt, the vast majority of them would say yes. Out of the majority of Jews that would like to see the temple be rebuilt, there are certain groups that are very active in doing everything that is needed for it to be rebuilt. So some believe that when the perfect candidate will be found, the building of the temple will begin.
You can see them peeking out. They look beautiful. Perfect. They just look perfect.
Right now to build the third temple?
There are actually quite a few, and it just shows that God is giving the Jewish people kind of signs or an expectation that it's time for the soon coming Messiah. But there is a group specifically that has reestablished the Levitical priesthood. They just started a school a few months ago, and they have a registry for those who are from the Levitical line that they could come and be trained and be ready to do the service in the temple. They've also started a red heifer farm. The Temple Institute did with an Israeli farmer, and that was again with ritual purity, that they need to have a red heifer that meets Jewish law and has been supervised and doesn't have any white hairs. It's completely red heifer to be able to be burned, mixed with running water, and then used to make everybody ritually pure to be able to go into the temple.
I mean, right now, Jewish people just going on the Temple Mount can create a riot sometimes. So can you envision a scenario where they would allow the temple to be built?
No. A lot of the scholars that I've spoken to talk about how the building of this next temple is really going to bring peace to Israel and to bring safety from all her enemies. And so in that way, I can see that any maybe leader that would be raised up or somebody that would be able to bring the nations together, especially those who might align with Israel, that there might be some agreement that the temple could exist there and this person could be set up in the temple.
You see, they know all of this. This is not new. Everyone knows this in Christianity. But because they believe these people are genuine and holders of the covenant, at some point they believe that Yah will intercede. But this is not going to happen because those people are not in covenant with Yahuwah, and everything that goes forth with them will be about leading the world into the satanic part of prophecy. And because people love the lie instead of the truth, they follow that path. They're in the strong delusion. It says, "For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. And then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Adon will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth that they might be saved. And for this reason, Elohim will send them strong delusion, that they should believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who did not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness." That's 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 7 through 12. You need to remember that. I have dedicated this channel to telling the unedited truth. And you must understand, it's your choice whether you want to believe it or not. It's not up to me. It does not change the truth, nor does it change what will happen in this world. It really just matters what side of it you're on. You can choose to disagree with me and make me your enemy. That's your choice. You make your own decision. In these last days, it's imperative to break away from the falsehoods and lies, and I know Yah is doing something today, allowing us to understand all of this. I am not special. He is just equipping me to spread truth biblically and academically. So if you have a problem with the truth, it's because you love the lie, and you will be condemned for it. I'm not doing anything special. I'm just reading books. You read these books and then tell me if you disagree, tell me why it's wrong. At the end, it's all on you. But I know one thing. I know who I serve, and he wins. He has promises for us, those who obey and love him. So for me, that's what I'm going to do. He said, "Listen to me, O house of Jacob, and all the remnant of the house of Yasharel, who have been upheld by me from birth, who have been carried from the womb. Even to your old age, I am he, and even to his gray hairs, I will carry you. I have made, and I will bear. Even I will carry, and will deliver you." Isaiah 46, verses 3 and 4. You see, he is my source, and he is my deliverer. I'm living a life in service to Him to do my part in preparing His kingdom, which is about helping prepare you. So after this information, if you still don't get it and you want to argue, then I suggest you find another channel to do it with, because I'm not here for it. My focus is on Yah and those who love Him. You all that believe the lies, I pray for you. But to all of Yasharel, natural and wild branches, let us live in the truth. Let us prepare our hearts. Let us keep Yah's commandments because we love Him. Let us prepare ourselves for our coming true King, while we also prepare for tribulation and a retreat from this world. Yahuwah will sustain us. So if you don't truly believe that, you better start and grow your faith. Get in the Word and seek out our Father in heaven like your life depends on it. Because it does. He is our source and our hope. Yahusha, our Savior, is waiting for us. Let us all make ourselves ready. This is our time to redeem. So, no longer live in the lies. And be blessed. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Okay. Thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please make sure to like it and share this video with others. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to subscribe to this channel. Yah willing, I upload every Friday. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on my website, TruthUnedited.com. If for any reason you no longer find this channel on YouTube, you can always find me on my website. Also, I'd like to thank all those who donate and contribute to this ministry. Your donations are truly a blessing to this ministry, and they help very much. Thank you for your love and your support and letting our Father use you. You are truly a blessing, and I truly appreciate your support. Be blessed. Okay, thanks again everyone for watching. I love you all.